Welcome to Chitty Media's bonus current affairs show that we're doing today on this very Shubh Deepavali day. We have some wonderful news for those of you that might have not yet heard, but we have a new Prime Minister in the UK. We have Rishi Sunak. India, it's our first Prime Minister of ethnic origin who happens to be an Indian and a Hindu. So we are all celebrating this Diwali day, and I'd like to discuss that further with our very own esteemed Panditji. Pandit Satish Sharmaji, welcome.
Pranam ji, Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.
It's just an amazing position we find ourselves in, isn't it? It's history in the making. And
Yes.
so just to acknowledge the auspicious event which has occurred on this most auspicious of days, and also the beginning of a new year, Nutan Varsh Abhinandan to everyone, and Diwali, Deepavali ki Shubh Kamnaएं sabhi ko. What a wonderful way to start this new year. Sonali, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for throwing this together at such short notice. I'm looking forward to exploring what has just happened, the seismic change, and let's see what we can expect.
Yes, absolutely, Panditji. This is a meteoric rise for Rishi, and we had to do a live stream, so we're here now on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube to discuss this further, because within 7 years of becoming an MP, he became Chancellor in 4 years, and within 7 years to becoming full Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. It really is a destiny's child here that we're talking about.
Well, I think it's a wonderful example, and you couldn't ask for a better example of the teachings of our Bhagavad Gita, which says, do your karma, do it to the best of ability, and allow the fruits to be provided by the universe. Sri Krishna ji says, leave the outcome to me. And I think this is a wonderful, wonderful example. It couldn't have been planned better, could it? I mean, when you think of all of the little factors, the minor hiccups en route, the gains and the wins and everything else, and then all of a sudden on today, the day when we celebrate the return of Shri Ram and Ram Parivar, the beginning of Ram Rajya, all of a sudden we have our dear Rishiji in office as the Prime Minister. One thing people have said, by the way, is that he's the first non-ethnic. I think Benjamin Disraeli was the first non-indigenous Prime Minister, so he's the second, but he is by far the first and certainly the most handsome of the ethnic Prime Ministers, who I'm sure will follow. So it's an extraordinary development.
Yes, no, absolutely. So, you know, he's going to bring something new now to the British public, something the public haven't really been used to. He is raised as a Hindu. He is a practicing Hindu. We've discussed this before. He has taken his oath as a MP on the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm sure he'll do the same as Prime Minister. It's Diwali. Last year, when he was Chancellor at number 11, he put divas outside number 11. He has correct. A daughter named Krishna. He has Ganpati on his desk. He is a practicing Hindu. But although, you know, he eats meat, he doesn't eat beef, but, you know, so he has some diluted values. However, he brings those substances that only Dharma and Dharmic teachings from a foundational age can bring. For example, his very first thing he did, rather than come out of number 10 and address the public on his victory, he actually got his MPs together in committee room number 14. That's a big committee room. That was my very first Parliament speech, by the way, in committee room 14. So I can actually picture it, him with all his MPs. And the first thing he's done is bring those dharmic values of uniting. He actually said to the party, now's the time to unite or die. You know, the victory and all that can come later, but the first thing he's doing is really fundamental and core and very dharmic.
So it's a good place to start. You know, in these positions of power, these roles of influence, there is a phrase which is normally used, and that is to assume authority. And so the phrase is that you've been now given by destiny the platform, you have to assume the authority that goes with it. And it's surprising that many people don't assume that authority. If you're a person whose character and nature is such that the role is bigger than you are, then more often than not, you will have a very difficult period of leadership. But if you're a person who is bigger than the role itself, then you can actually assume that authority and start to do what needs to be done without being too engrossed about how will I look, and the theatrics and the atmospherics are of no interest to a person who genuinely assumes authority. And so you're right, he didn't play to the crowd. He realized that there was work to be done, and the work would start immediately with seizing control, assuming authority, and starting the actual day-to-day tasks at hand. So I think it's a great first step. He'll have stamped his seal on the way in which the party is functioning. And, you know, we have seen that parliamentarians over the last few months have become very not well behaved, shall we say. Discipline has gone completely to pot. Everybody is pulling in different directions with their own fears and their own ambitions running amok. And so now that the first two stages have completed, a lot of the difficulties and the conflicts have all disappeared. He can now step into the status and really start doing the work. So you're right, a great way to start. And as I've said, I think he's bigger than the role. He'll be able to use this role to make something very, very important happen in this country. One of the other things you mentioned is his Hinduness. Personally, I think this is going to be the greatest challenge, shall we say, but not for him. You know, we as a Sanatani community, we're accustomed to fitting in anywhere. We work out what the difficulties are, we work out the parameters within which we have to function, and then we do the best that we can and leave the rest to Shri Krishna.
Yeah.
And this country, though, has a strange history. The history is one of touting the highest of values, creating the most wonderful of laws, and then behind the scenes completely flouting them and not adhering to them. And, you know, let's see, we're already beginning to see the hidden color discrimination. Some of the hidden layers of racism are beginning to emerge. People who in the past have applauded and touted, oh, we must be colorblind. We must not be, sort of swayed by a person's religion, ethnicity, gender, and all of those sorts of things. And yet when a prominent Hindu appeared on the scene, we can put all of those to one side and go for it, hammer and tongues. So I think the biggest issue will actually be for the establishment, the corridors of power to assume a position of deference to the role of prime minister and not pay attention so much to the occupant's characteristics. This will be central to the challenges. I recall that Pritiji used to have difficulty in talking with many of the people, the civil servants, who just could not stomach the fact that there was a brown woman, an Indian woman across the table telling them what to do. I look forward to the day when she publishes her account of her time as the first Hindu woman occupying the position of Home Secretary with a great deal of interest. So let's see. I think that this is a beginning of a great stage for this country.
Yes, absolutely. The other thing is that he seems to have a lot of the party behind him now, a lot of the MPs behind him. So he should be able to get on with the job. There are, like you said, some racial elements there, and people are calling for a general election, saying we haven't given him the mandate. But what they fail to remember is they've given their MPs the mandate to elect on their behalf. So he has got the mandate, and he is sticking to the 2019 manifesto. He said he will. Again, he's got the mandate. So just to remind people, so he's not taking any nonsense like that. And he's just said there's no general election. So he's nipped that in the bud quite well.
Yep.
So
no, I think his opening remarks that, we are facing an existential threat.
yes.
And either party comes together, unites, or it will die. And I think that's actually a very, very perceptive statement. We're at the cusp of a new century. We've moved into this 21st century, but we still have systems, parliamentary systems, electoral systems, systems of governance and of managing the nation, but also the colonies in place. And those are so archaic. They really don't have a place in this new millennium. And so I'm really hoping that what he will do is move everything forward towards a 21st century democracy and away from these old one party takes all, first past the post, and everybody else can sort of just wither on the vine. We need more coalitions. We need more cooperation. We need people to start to learn how to work together, even though they're from differing opinions. And I think that he's possibly going to bear that in mind and push those sorts of changes through. So it should be very good to see those happen.
So, coming to relationships and coalitions, what do you think now is the relationship between the UK and India, the fifth global economy joining hands with the sixth global economy? Do you think that's going to strengthen relationships now we have an Indian origin prime minister? Or do you think some people are saying he's going to be extra hard on Indians to show that he's very neutral to the British public, towards India, and loyal to just Britain? I personally think he's in a really good position. He can have the best of both worlds, and if he manages it correctly, he can be. Do you know how we have we have Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh.
Okay.
So we have the creator, we have the destroyer, but in the middle, the very important position of sustainer. If he brings those Parititya values to the prime ministerial role, I think if he handles it very well, he can make things really happen beyond all of our imagination to great heights.
Well, this is the heart of the matter, really. Remember, there's that famous saying, East is East and West is West, and never the twain shall meet.
Yes.
And so either they're going to meet and embrace, or it's going to be a head-on collision. And the issue is, will he embrace his dharmic instincts and his dharmic intuition? Even though intellectually he may have some of the, shall we say, the education and the conditioning and the value system, which is not necessarily dharmic, but intuition always plays a part. And those sanskar that we acquire from our mothers, our grandparents, grandfathers, and parents, they become the foundations of how we choose to decide things. And so, we have now in place probably the most energetic Samudra Manthan about to start in the British establishment. Bear this in mind, that on the one hand, we have the Western idea of playing the great game, which is to create divide and rule, which is to create conflict and fault lines and then sell weapons, to engage in regime change so that you can extract resources. All of those things are totally adharmic. And frankly speaking, all of those things are the reason why the West is plunging into chaos as we speak, because they are adharmic. The East, however, has always had light. As they say, ex oriente lux, ex occidente lex. From the East comes light, and from the West comes law. And so, we have a combination of those factors also combining now within the premises of 10 Downing Street. If he allows himself to embrace the Eastern philosophies, the longer term perspectives, the notion that we are all connected, and so what harms one ultimately harms everybody. All of those teachings might even enable the British establishment to move from its ancestral orientation of rape, pillage, create conflict, and sell weapons into a more holistic way of existing in the world. And I think if he does try and do that, Bharat is actually ready to embrace and support that. Can you imagine? Bharat has 28 states, and all the ones where the BJP have been established have shown dramatic leaps forward in terms of economic performance. The mortality rate has plunged, child infancy, death rates, all of those have the factors look like dramatic developments are occurring. And if Britain behaves like the 29th state on some levels, even if it's only the friendly diplomatic levels, then I think Britain will accrue a great deal of benefit. I do hope Rishi places at his highest priority the well-being of the people of these islands, the common people on these islands, because for a long period of time, the establishment has been running its own little game and has neglected the average man on the street. And the person who is picking up the tab for all of these adventurism expeditions that have been embarked upon ever since the various interventions in other countries, if those are what have detracted and prevented the establishment from delivering the promise of economic benefit to the people. If he does that, if he focuses on what's good for the people and not get dragged into this ancient, dirty, pernicious, silly sort of schoolyard gang warfare that has permeated British establishments, there is a potential for a dramatic leap forward. I'd be very surprised if a free trade agreement wasn't signed in the very near future. I'd be very surprised if the economic benefits of such a free trade agreement didn't start to flow into this country. If they flow into this country and the relationship between Bharat and the United Kingdom becomes even more profitable and economically advantageous, then Britain could not only not need Europe as much as it has done, it could actually become a leading partner with India, into which Europe could then be accessed and Europe could be put into place. So there is a potential for a dramatic change, and I think he has the courage, I think he has the support system, and I know for a fact that all of our Bharatiya family here, irrespective of whether you're traditionally Labour or Lib Dem or Green or Conservatives, all of us have felt empowered to see this development. It's given us a great deal of confidence, and we will support him to the best of our abilities so that he can do good work for the nation.
Yes. And can you just tell us some of his policies? We have a war on Ukraine, we've got terrorism here, we've got so many issues happening, we've got inflation, we've got lots of issues going on, the weakening pound. There's just so much. Can you just share some of his policies with us?
Oh, well, I'm not privy to them, but I can put a few pieces together. And many of these, I think, may change. Because remember, the policies that were announced a few weeks ago, it was a different political scenario. And Rishi was a different political candidate. What's happened now is that with Liz's period in office, the climate has changed completely. And he actually has a lot more authority than he would have had he ascended to the position of leadership in place of Liz. So that gives him the capacity to make decisions with authority, because the party will be bound with a sense of unity and the need to come together. He could take decisions which perhaps weren't even policy statements in the past. You know, for the benefit of the world, one thing has to happen, and that is that this Ukraine problem has to be resolved.
Yes.
Right? Whoever sort of instigated it, and, you know, we've all seen how NATO broke its promises and its treaty promises not to move towards the east and to keep Ukraine as a buffer state. We've seen how that was precipitated by breaches on the side of the Western nations. And so really, this war has to stop. It's not helping anybody, and all it is leading towards, it's a runaway train leading towards chaos and poverty. Maybe this will be an opportunity for him to reach out to the honest broker who refused to take sides. Remember, Prime Minister Modi said, no, we will not take sides.
Right.
He rejected Liz's demands and requests and said, no, your enemies are your enemies of your choosing. They don't necessarily have to be our enemies.
Yes.
And I remember at the time, Jaishankarji saying, you know, the only solution will come through negotiation. And we have to have somebody who is willing to be the party, the mediator, who will moderate and make this happen. So maybe there is a possibility of even resolving this Ukraine issue in a manner which is perhaps different to the way in which the Ukraine policy has been sculpted to date. There is a sense, isn't there, that the American administration has fallen prey to the hawks, the warmongers and the military machine in the Americas. And to some degree, remember that finance and armament sales are also one of the biggest revenue earners for this country. And perhaps the warmongers and the hawks in this country also need to be reined in a little bit. If that's the case, then here's a great opportunity to do it. And all of this is necessary for a 21st century democracy. All of these changes need to be put into place. So I think he'll do that. One of the other things he mentioned quite clearly was that Islamist terrorism had to be dealt with head on. And there were other people who have also made that statement, that in the past, perhaps the PREVENT program, rather than it focusing on the areas where it was obviously needed, it got distracted and sort of sidelined. Maybe he will press forward for that to be brought into line as well. So hopefully we will see genuine engagement with that. I'm really hopeful also that, being a family man, he will have seen the IICSA report, which came out only a week or two ago, Professor Alexis Jay's report on the abuse of children and vulnerable adults up and down the country, which has been going on for such a long period of time and has never been pushed forward. And so there's an opportunity for him to come in and make a dramatic change without too much political fallout there as well. So lots and lots of opportunities for him to do some very good work for the British people. And I think he's got the mandate to make it happen. Do you want me to make a prediction?
Go for it.
So I've been meditating on this issue, and I'm confident that the Labour Party are in a great deal of turmoil at his appearance on the scene now. There are a number of things that they were banking on. Personally, I think, despite everyone's expectations, I think he will preserve the Red Wall. A lot of people are saying he will lose the Red Wall, and I don't think so. Because if there's one thing that people across the Red Wall appreciate, it's straight talking.
Yes.
And remember, everything in the run-up to the elections, he was saying this will happen, that will happen. If we get this wrong, mortgage rates will go up, interest rates will go up, inflation will go up. And all of that has happened exactly as he has predicted. And it's not very common that you see a politician make predictions which actually manifest and become real in such a short space of time. So I think the Red Wall will appreciate that.
Yes, he's got 2 years to win them over. And some people have recently said, we've not heard from him since he put his hat in the ring a couple of days ago. But if they just care to remember his whole campaign over summer, everything he said that he would do and what Liz shouldn't do, he was completely 100% correct. So we are lucky to have him now, especially seeing what the debacle we've experienced the last few weeks. I'm sure these people should hopefully, you would think, embrace and appreciate the second chance they're given.
Yeah, and it's refreshing to see that when he rolls up his sleeves and walks into a factory, you can see he actually belongs there, and rolling up his sleeves isn't an artifice, a device to look as though he is working. He connects with workers. And excuse me, his background is very much project related. It's how to put things together, how to gather the resources to execute them, deliver them, and correct them. So this could be a very, very good development for the country. And if that happens, my prediction is that we will see a Labour Party split into two. This will be very interesting to see. The Labour Party has, for a period of time, it's almost like a schizophrenia, in that there is a war going on. You know how we're commemorating the demise of Ravan with his 10 heads.
Yes.
There are some times when you look at the Labour Party and you think, oh my God, there are so many heads there. They're all chattering and they're all pulling away. And I think what will happen is that we will see a polarization. We'll see a separation. We will see a clarification, so that there are certain policies, and the British public will be able to draw clear water between them and then choose accordingly. If the British public wants a left-wing party, it has the opportunity to actually go ahead and select it. And so I think there will be clarification. And if the Labour Party were hoping to win 2024, I would go as far as to say that I think the appearance of Rishi Sunak as a Conservative Prime Minister will scupper all of their hopes and expectations.
Yes, no, it's an absolutely interesting time, and it'll be good to see what he does. So today, King Charles III is coming down. I think he was in Sandringham. So he's going to accept Liz's resignation, and then we'll have Rishi in any day now. Lots of Hindus are saying, let's hope it's on the Wednesday because there's an eclipse on tomorrow. So we're going to go with the right date for the auspicious start of the Rishi reign.
So are you gently suggesting that this Diwali will be remembered as the beginning of Rishi Raja?
I think it could be. I think it could be. I mean, the timing
Why
couldn't
not?
be better.
Why not? Why not?
I mean, fantastic timing. So, Panditji, this is my very first live stream with you, and we have a few people that have commented with questions. Okay. Do you mind if I read a couple of them out and see if you can?
No, please, go ahead.
So that's the first one here. If the UK... Okay.
We're delighted that people are interacting with this.
Absolutely.
It gives us the opportunity to explore many, many ideas that maybe we wouldn't have even thought of. So thank you so much for joining in and sharing your questions.
So let's read the first one here. So if the UK economy crashes, then would a person of Indian origin be blamed endlessly? So had we done what this trusted, God forbid.
I don't think that will be a major problem, to be perfectly honest. I don't think the UK economy will crash now, right? I think there is an opportunity and a window has been created to actually restore some sort of fiscal stability. Stability is the most important thing. Remember, in an economy, people want to be able to do a cash flow, a spreadsheet projection, which covers more than about 2.5 weeks. And this will at least give us that opportunity. He'll be able to pencil in a safe time and determinedly keep stability in place. That will then have a knock-on effect. People will start to make plans. People will start to commit to investments. And slowly the economy will move forward. You know, one thing I think he will remember, and I hope he does, and that is that an economy is actually the people doing what people need to do in their daily lives, and actually facilitating normal human economic activity. You know, having children, needing to educate them, feed them, buying clothes, building schools, and going to work, doing jobs. I remember I was at an economic conference once in the United States, and they asked what's the most reliable indicator of economic growth and economic decline. And as they were having this conversation, they pulled out the sales chart for Harley Davidson motorcycles. And they said the reason that we've been able to map this is because it exactly reflects the way in which the average people in this country have been living their lives. And you can see that when they're in their boomer stages, nobody buys Harley Davidsons, right? When they get to the stage where they've built their homes, the children are educated, then all of a sudden you get a peak in these areas. So it's facilitating the average person and allowing them to do the work, to earn what they need to earn, to live well, to be prosperous. And that translates into prosperity for everyone. You can't do it in any other way, shape, or form. You can't do it by fixing armament sales or by producing subprime financial instruments in the city, etc. The real work is to actually support people, and they're good people on these islands. They will actually rebuild the economy, and his role is merely to help them to do it and not create a hindrance. So I don't think the economy will crash. I think he will be able to resurrect this.
Yes, I mean, the man himself is such an inspiration. Like you said, he's happy to roll up his sleeves. He used to help his parents in their pharmacy. He's done some waitering in the past. You know, he's really worked his way up. His parents saved money to send him to a private school, and he made sure he got into Oxford. You know, so many kids are quite spoiled and do get to go to private schools, but they don't really make the most of it. They end up in, you know, average universities, if any, and, you know, really did embrace and clutch those opportunities life has given to him, be it the girl he fell in love with, to whatever life has thrown at him. He's absolutely embraced it, and I find that really inspirational. As parents, in an Indian community, we always push our children to be the best they can be, but he's just now up the bar. We'll be like, when are you going to become prime minister? You know,
I do hope he has the courage and the strength of character to follow his intuition. I know that it's going to be difficult to do in an administration and a civil service, which has very, very rigid ways of doing things. And sometimes, well, I would say many times, the civil service has thwarted the best attempts of the most, shall we say, enlightened prime ministerial candidates to make change. I'm sure you've seen Yes Minster and those sorts of Yes Prime Minister, those sorts of programs. They're actually not far from the truth. There are many people who are civil servants of that ilk. So I think that'll be his real challenge. There is a second challenge, which I've just noticed one of the questions, and that second challenge is the agenda of those who seek global domination, because there are, and we're pretty much aware of their influence and their impact. How will he actually interface with them and on occasion go against their wishes so that this island can prosper? I think that would be the greatest conflict, the conflict between those who desire global control and those who want strong Dharmic nationalism, which is totally different to conventional Christianist nationalism.
Yes, no, absolutely. And a couple of easy questions here I think we've answered. Marie G says, did he take his oath on the Bhagavad Gita? Really?
Indeed, he did. And I would recommend everybody read the Bhagavad Gita. As I have said, it's one of the greatest mirrors that when you read it, it reveals so much to us about who we are ourselves. Absolutely. That's the biggest contribution.
Yes, it's only 700 verses, but of such nectar and wisdom, it's worth a read for everyone. this one you've answered about the grooming gangs. You touched on that and his approach there. What else do we have?
While we're just mulling through these questions,
Sure.
I really hope, and I hope we can bring it to his attention, that he looks at the work that was done by Sarah Champion, that's been done by Maggie Oliver for a long period of time, and they desperately need to be supported. With them being supported, they can make a huge contribution to the next generation. And remember, when we are old and wizened, we're going to need the support and the care and the affection and attention of the next generation. So that would be a worthwhile investment to make.
Okay. Another interesting question here, actually. Do you think they'll refer to him as Indian origin or South Asian? I thought
Well,
that was good because
that's a great question.
Yes.
Well, I've been looking through the headlines, and already the attempts to erase his, shall we say, more colourful identity, those aspects, have already started. Newspapers are referring to him as of South Asian descent, and the aspect of his Hinduness is being written out. There is an emphasis on Indian, if there is one, but the aspect of his Hinduness is really being replaced. I think the Guardian was the one who really pushed Indian origin Hindu, I think they had said. But we know the Guardian never does that with a sense of appreciation. It's always a snipe of some description. But it's going to be an interesting one, because I wonder what he really thinks of himself as. Right? He knows he's of Indian origin. Fair enough. He knows that he is also following a Hindu tradition. But he is certainly born in this country. His nationality and his citizenship, he is British. And so that's fine.
Yes, I mean, I can empathise with him because, like him, I'm Indian, but I was born here, and I'd call myself a British Indian. I'm not just British. I'm not just Indian. I'm the best of both, and I think Rishi's the same. And we all wear our label proudly. We are British Indian, because some people I know that are Indian always say they're British or Kenyan or whichever country they're born in, but your skin is brown, your blood is Indian, you're Indian, so that comes into the label.
There are two aspects, both of different faces of the same coin. One is how you think and feel you yourself are, how you identify, and then there's how others identify you. And there was that telephone call to a radio station only a couple of days ago in which a person was adamant that he was not British. And it raises that whole spectre of discrimination and racism. So it's going to work its way through, but I don't think it'll be a problem for him. He's very comfortable with his identity, and that's what's required.
Yes, absolutely. Not trying to be someone you're not. What else do we have? Why should we bail out UK? No, I think you've covered some of these questions here, actually.
Well, there's a very pointed question about the relationship between Bharat and the United Kingdom, and 45 trillion has been mentioned. I'm just waiting for somebody to mention the Kohinoor and things like this.
Well, that was somewhere touched upon about the colonial history and how that's going to work now with an Indian origin person being at the helm of the ex-British Empire. The United.
Well, you recall, Saloni, I think you were there. You will recall that time when Rajiv Malhotraji visited us, and we arranged for him to speak in the Parliament on soft power reparations.
Yes.
Because there's a story that must be told. And there's a story that is told today of colonial supremacy, which needs to stop being told. And if that can be made to happen, there will be a release of friendship and energy. Guilt will be released. And the current generations on both sides of that equation will actually be able to move forward. So that work needs to be done. Let's hope we can make that happen.
Yes, absolutely. Let's see if there are any more questions. No, just a few statements, really. I think we've covered the basics for someone who's very brand new. Does it stop the attacks on Hindus? I'm not quite sure how that. Yeah, I think
there is. I think this is actually a catalyst. This is a catalytic moment. There are going to be a lot of changes happening. It's a world which is shrinking, and irrespective of how it happened, and I'm speaking as somebody who's been in this country for 55 plus years, even though I was born in Bharat. the words of Will Durant are always very close to me, that the Englishmen are the best of people. He wrote, I think, the Englishman is the best of gentlemen, but the British are the worst of imperialists. And the imperialists are few and far between, but their power is disproportionate. And, I think this is one of those moments where the English, the Welsh and the Scots, the indigenous people of these islands, would actually embrace the change, as they always have done. But it's that establishment based on empire which will struggle to swallow this. And that will be the determinant of whether this island and this nation leaps forward or not. So, let's all be part of this. He started a new dance for all of us. And I think the degree with which we join into this dance and do our little bit to support him and carry on making our contribution will determine the outcome. He has sent out an invitation to all of us to embrace what we think are our highest ideals. Let's do that. So best of luck for him. He couldn't have possibly had a more auspicious day to start his period of service. And so let's send him our best wishes and ashirwad and blessings from everyone. I know that he has our appreciation and support.
Absolutely. We're all very proud that he's made it to the top job in the UK in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, lovely.
Pandit, thank you so much for your time, and
it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Will be celebrating, and as will the many conservatives as well, because he holds those true conservative values. So we look forward to seeing a change in the British climate now with our finances. He'll be known as the fiscal premier, I think.
Well, history. Let's see. I think it'll be larger than that. But whilst I have your attention, I'd just like to thank Chithi Media guys and your tech team for going for this live stream on such an auspicious occasion. Also, it's wonderful to have. It's wonderful to have the engagement of our audience and to get their support as well. There are obviously going to be differences of opinion, but what a wonderful opportunity to experience those differences and to explore them. And that, I think, is what embodies Rishi Rajya.
Absolutely, Panditji. Very well said. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your Diwali day with the family, loved ones.
And you too. And you too.
Enjoy the celebrations. And to our audience, thank you for joining us on this Shubh Diwali day. Thank you.
And hopefully I will see you on Saturday. And who knows, if the Chithi tech team are still as passionate about everything, maybe we can live stream from outside of the BBC even. Ooh. There's an idea. I'll submit it to you. Best wishes to yourself and to the team. Thank you, Soniji. Jai Shri Ram.
Thank you. Jai Shri Ram.
And happy Diwali to everybody. Liz, you too. Thank you.